YouTube? Welcome to Max Boneyard Builds. I wanted to start this channel because after I did my first build, which is sitting behind me, which we'll run through it here in a minute, everybody was amazed at how I was able to pull it off at such a cheap price. Now, you may be thinking, well, cheap doesn't equal quality. Well, you can have both if you know where to look. Now, are you going to be able to have some $50,000 Barrett Jackson car on a budget? Absolutely not. Don't have your expectations so high. But can you have a fun cruiser that you can enjoy driving and be reliable? Absolutely. So a little bit about myself. I live here in the Midwest, right here outside of Metro St. Louis. So with living in the Midwest, you get a lot of rust boxes, but there's still good parts out there if you know where to look. One of my favorite places to look is the Boneyard, aka the junkyards. I have several around me that I go to all the time. I go to them even when I don't need anything. Why do I do that? Because you never know what's going to show up. So you always got to be looking and be ready to pick something up, even if you might need it in the future. So didn't take a whole lot of video whenever I did this build behind me, but after this short intro, what I'm going to do is I took a lot of pictures though, so I'm going to piece all the pictures together and do a little voiceover, kind of tell you how I did things and how I put things together and where I found parts at and some prices and stuff. Whenever I was originally going to do this build, COVID hit, which we all know how that happened, and prices have skyrocketed. So in my opinion, if you go secondhand to the Boneyard and get yourself pieces and parts from cars that are already scrapped out, get to know your guys at your local junkyards, guys. If you don't, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. If you go to a corporate, you know, like an LKQ or something, it's going to be really hard to do. But man, if you've got a mom and pop style junkyard in your area, I've got a couple in mind. Get to know the guys. Go there on a daily. Even if you ain't pick something up, talk to the guys. They'll get to know you. They'll get to know your build. They get to know, you know, parts that you're looking for. Then whenever they come in, they'll hit you up and say, hey, we got something in that you may be interested in, and maybe they'll get you first dibs on it. So my first build, it's sitting here behind me. It's a 81 GMC 1500. It's been rebadged as a C10 with the grill and the tailgate trim. I was eyeballing this thing for several years before it came on the market. It was sitting behind an old upholstery shop. Weeds up to the doors. Finally, it resurfaced. They wanted to sell it. I jumped all over it. Most people can't believe it, but I picked it up for just $1,000. It had a 350 that was 30 over, had a Saginaw 4-speed in it. And once I got it running again, it was really rough when I got it. Once I got it running again, it was fun, you know, and I have zero formal training as far as mechanics go. None at all. You can call me a certified YouTube mechanic. If I can't figure it out, I start looking for videos. I start looking for books. I start looking for, you know, whatever I can. Facebook pages. Internet forums are great. Just start looking around. The way I looked at it was I wanted a car that I could start working on that was already broken. Why? You can't break what already is broken. So after getting it running, I enjoyed it for a while. The 4-speed that was in it started grinding. Pulled the transmission out, took it to a transmission guy, and the cluster gear was completely roached in it. Well, this was right about when COVID hit and parts were scarce, and whatever you could find was super expensive. So when it was all said and done, to rebuild the 4-speed Saginaw that was in it was going to cost me upwards of $1,000 to $1,500. I wasn't going to do it. So started, where did I go? Went to my Boneyards. Started talking to a few guys that I knew at different junkyards in the area. They told me to save my money, and they just kept pushing, well, why don't you LS swap it? Why don't you LS swap it? The motor I had ran great. I really wasn't in the market. I wanted to keep it old school because it was an old school vehicle, but I knew that the LS base engines had ridiculous power factory compared to the old school short blocks. So I eventually said, why not? So I waited, kept my money in my pocket, and then eventually one of the guys at the junkyards got a hold of me and said, come on down. So I was able to pick up a LQ9. I have an 03 Cadillac Escalade, completely running. I took everything I possibly could from the Escalade. Fuse box, wiring harness, PCM, you name it, I took it. The only thing I didn't take was the gas pedal, because the Escalades had retractable gas pedals, and that just would have been a complete nightmare to try and retrofit. So I ended up getting a different gas pedal just out of a standard 1500 pickup truck. And I'll tell you what, let's take a walk around. I'll show you what I did, how I pulled it off. I'll shoot some prices at you. And the big thing is you can do it on a budget, still make it look clean, and still have it be safe. I see some of these where guys use the factory wiring harnesses, and it just looks like an absolute mess. Like, I completely thinned mine out, laid it all out. It took a lot of time. It's going to take you some time. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day. But it's nice and clean when you're done. There's no reason to have a spaghetti mess laying on top of your engine bay just asking for a fire to happen, or flopping your fuel lines just running wherever they want. Take your time, cut them to length, put them where they need to go, and let's see what the outcome is. Okay, first thing I want to tell you about, so I want to tell you about the paint job. Whenever I first got this truck, it was about 3 different colors, and primarily in rattle can gray primer. It was rough. However, the body itself was great. It's got its dents, it's got its dings, but it was nice and solid. So, me, being on the budget like I am, what did I jump to? Jumped to YouTube. Looked all over the place. And what I finally ended up with was the Rust-Oleum roll-on paint job. It took tons of time. It is not perfect by any means. However, what I wanted is the end result was the faux Tina look. So, what I did, sanded everything down, cleaned up all the rough spots. What I did was I rattle canned it with a black base primer. Then I did the roll-on Rust-Oleum paint job. After it hardened nice and good, I waited several months, make sure it was nice and good. Then what I did was I came back through, sanded it back down, buffed it, sanded it, buffed it, so on, so forth. And as you can see, I mean, you can see my reflection right now. People cannot believe that my paint job on this truck was a whopping like $60. It was all I had in it. Maybe I'd call it 70 or 80 by the time you put your primer and everything else in there. That's it. Super cheap, tons of compliments all the time. As far as the motor build goes, once I got everything pulled out, guys, clean up your engine bays. It takes no time to clean up your engine bays. All you got to do is degreaser, clean up your frame. That's all it takes. As you can see, everything's been cleaned up, nice and good. I shot the firewall down, sanded it down lightly, shot it with some flat black. You cannot go wrong with flat black. It looks good all the time. As you can see, there's the LQ9 out of the Escalade. When I had the motor on the stand, take a couple weeks, even if you're not going to break the motor down. I didn't. This motor sounded phenomenal. No ticks, no lifter tap, no nothing. But what did I do? Took the intake off, covered everything up, cleaned it. Then as I was done, as you can see, the alternator power steering bracket and everything. Got it all painted black. Looks good. Here's your factory fuse box. Sorry, bumping against my garage door. There's my factory fuse box. It's big. I know it's big. It's ugly. But it cost me nothing. I got it with the motor. Wiring harness came with the motor. Cost me nothing. It all came with it. PCM, did not have to pay for HP tuners, didn't have to pay for anything. eBay, believe it or not, it's still around. eBay, got a 6.0, 4L80, VATS was turned off, torque management was turned off, power enrichment was turned on. The seller I used, I think it was Auto 101. He reprogrammed it with my gear ratio in the back. Everything is set up. Plug it in, fired right off, no problems. I think it was like $150 with the PCM. I still have the factory PCM that came with the Escalade. That one, now I just have a spare. The radiator and coolant, or radiator and cooling rather, I used the factory radiator that was already in the truck. It was a big block radiator. I figured might as well go with it. I did not use the one out of the Escalade. I could have grabbed it if I wanted to, but I didn't. It's worked fine. I've had zero issues whatsoever. Cold air intake. Guys, junkyards have them all the time. They're like $40 on eBay, even if you can't get one. But if not, grab one out of the junkyard. A lot of junkyards, they just get rid of them. Because why? Because they're not factory. I did splurge on the exhaust. Went with Speed Engineering headers and wires. Best decision I ever made. They look good. The fitment was great. I had zero issues with that. As you can see, there's my transmission dipstick tube. Guys, eBay special. I'm telling you, I think it was like $25-30. It's a flex tube. It's made for the 4L80. Fits on the firewall. Don't get me wrong, it's kind of a pain. Sometimes it doesn't fit quite perfect to get it in and out of the tube, but it works. I can check my levels. Everything's fine. Zero issues at all. And as you can see, it's clean. Everything's nice and clean. There's zero issues. Factory wiring harness. I get compliments all the time on how clean it is. You can do it on a budget. Go to your Boneyards. Get the parts that you need. And you can still have something very presentable that's still highly impressive. It's wintertime right now in the Midwest, so I got my battery tenders and stuff on right now, so we'll go to the inside. Let's take a check on the inside. Alright guys, here's an interior view. As you can see, it's been completely swapped out. A lot of you are probably going to be wondering, what the heck seats are those? Well, say hello to the Boneyard. 2003 C10 seats. Made a custom bracket that those bolt onto. We went to the factory locations. I'm telling you, they're great. This truck originally was a 3-speed on the tree truck, non-tilt column. So whenever I was searching for seats, it still had the original column in it. I could not get my legs underneath the steering wheel to save my life with the bench seat. Big problem with the C10s. Not a lot of leg room. I'm just under 6 foot. Not a lot of room. So when I was looking for seats, I was looking for thin. S10 seats, not a lot of padding. They're made for a small truck, so you put the small seats in the big truck, you got more room. They're comfortable. They work great. Picked them up, next to nothing. Also made a center console, as you can see. Made it out of MDF. It's got cup holders. It's got 6x9s in the back, 6.5s in the front. I also added a B&M shifter. That's what I'm currently running. With the console, I didn't want to have the column shifter. I wanted to have a console shifter, so I picked up the B&M shifter. Looks cool. And guys, secondhand, was not firsthand. Didn't buy it from the stores for $400, $500, whatever they're wanting nowadays. Ask around. I picked it up for $50. All my gauges, all the gauges work. Minus speedometer. Speedometer is cable driven, and the LS is digital signal. So I still don't have a speedometer, but eventually I will pick up the box that makes the digital signal to the cable drive. Everything else lights up. Everything else works. As you can see, all lights up blue. Gotta love LEDs, make everything look good. As far as the gas pedal goes, I actually still have the factory gas pedal. It has just been retrofitted to the drive-by-wire. Pardon shadows. It's been retrofitted to the drive-by-wires. Cut that sucker off, welded it on there. Yeah, my welds aren't the best, I know. And it's dirty, but that's okay. Cut it off, put it where I wanted it, welded it on there, zero issues whatsoever. Total, I am talking completely total for the truck. As it sits today, how much money have I spent? By the time I bought it, sold the 350, bought the LS, bought different brackets, sold different parts, bought different parts, everything completely total, I am in this truck about $3,000. $3,000, 6.0, 4L80, different interior, different gauges, super cheap paint job. I do use it as a truck. As you can see, I'm always buying parts from the junkyards and stuff. $3,000. That's all new tires, all new brakes all the way around. Make it safe. I enjoy it. Tons of smiles per mile. Everybody who rides in it is completely surprised by the power that it's got. And this is what Max Boneyard Builds is all about. So, what I'm going to do, put some pictures together. Going to do a little voiceover here and there. I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you guys enjoy the channel. My oldest little kid that I am responsible for, he is now a teenager. He's looking for a truck himself. I think me and him are going to pick up another project. $500, somewhere like that, $1,000. We're going to clean it up, do another build. Hopefully you guys stick around for that. If you guys got any questions on anything you see in this video or any of the other ones, hit me up. I'll be glad to answer any of those questions for you. Thanks a lot.